And so when you do that, then you can remove the link arm. And it was naturally this shiny. I did not have to clean this at all. And so these carbs are, this is a really famous engine, I've come to find out, and it really has taken care of itself quite well. So these were naturally this shiny. And you can see the jet needle through there, and that's a new jet needle. And so, but it was old. And a jet needle did come with the rebuild kit. So what I had to do was, you had to get a screwdriver, which is another Phillips head. Okay, so see if I can get this in here. You can sort of, it's hard, it's really hard to say, it's really bright. You can see in there there's two screws, the two Phillips head screws, and so you have to sort of use a screwdriver. Make sure it's a really good screwdriver because you might strip those screws. And if you strip those screws, you're in a little bit of trouble, So you got to get in there, you unscrew those screws, and then that way you can pull the link arm out. And so I've already done that with another one. And so here's the detached link arm, and you can see where those two screws were. They were screwed in there. And you can actually, there's a spring that holds these things tight right here. I'll put this up against the white background. There you go. And that spring comes off pretty easily. It just hooks onto those two ends. And when you do that, you can sort of detach these two parts. And so you can see how it's already coming up a little bit there. And there. So I'm going to push that back in there. There we go. Okay. And so the spring is really holding these two together. And that's really all that's holding these two together, this joint here. So you have that. And then what you are left with is just the inside of this throttle valve, which I've already cleaned, which is holding the jet needle, and then that should just allow the jet needle to come up through there and just come right out. Again, this is a new jet needle that came with the package, and it's got this little stopper disc type thing on the end of it, which I was really struggling to figure out what it was for when it came in the package, but luckily when I got this thing apart, it was very clear what it was for. It's to hold it in there so it doesn't drop all the way through. There's some jet needles that have multiple notches on where to put this thing, and if that's the case, you want to make sure you take note of what that notch is, so you can put this on the same notch on your new jet needle that you have to get the same performance as from your carbs. You have to start from complete scratch when putting your carbs in optimum condition to be usable, whatever. Anyway, so that's how you change that. So then you just can put that back down in there. And then you can, put the link arm back in there after you've cleaned it and screw it down in there. And then you're good to go on that part. And so the last little bit that was kind of confusing to me that I was looking on there is getting rid of, removing the stuff that was on the top of this. Like all the stuff that's just sort of on the top of the float bowl here was kind of difficult. The first issue I had was to remove this float needle here, or I guess float pin, sorry, float pin, which is this metal pin here that holds the float in there. It holds the float. It goes through this cylindrical part here to hold it in there. And so I actually almost totally ruined the thing because I was using just a pick. It's a straight pick that I got at Sears. Can't find it. There it is. So just using like this straight pick and just sort of using it, and then like using a rubber mallet and just sort of pounding it through. But I couldn't tell which direction I needed to go, and so it turns out that the direction I needed to go was the one towards this, what you would call I don't know. They weren't calling them pins necessarily. I'm trying to think. They're not columns. Crap! I knew this would happen when I do the video. Anyway. You can see that one of these guys comes out further than the other one, and so I needed to hit it towards that as opposed to away from it, and so I finally was able to get that through. It was kind of stuck. So I got that through. That enabled me to remove the float and the float valve, which hangs off of it. I showed you that float valve earlier, and you can see this in this other guy's video, but you just sort of hang that on that piece of plastic there. So it's just sort of like hanging there. That's how that is. So I got that out. And then the second issue that I had was this pilot screw. I'll take the plastic off so that you can see it. Really got that in there pretty good. this pilot screw that goes down in the front of this guy. Now this one's a little bit taller than my other one. Of course, it's not screwed all the way in yet, but I'm just saying that it's, you know, it's a little bit taller. And so there are a couple of pieces that go with this. There is a rubber washer, or I guess an O-ring. There is a metal washer and a spring that all have to go down inside this thing. And I was confused about the order because when I pulled them up, they all seemed to be in different orders. So whoever was working on this before didn't do a very good job. So it seems that, according to the diagram, the O-ring goes in first, followed by the metal washer, followed by the spring, and then you can put the pilot screw in there and screw it down. And then you can, you know, adjust that once you're up and running with your carbs to get those all together. So, yeah. There's also I think I talked about it earlier, the main jet that was sort of stuck down in the middle of this thing, and I had to sort of hammer it out to get to it. That also came in my carb rebuild kit, so I'll be putting that together. The last thing is the slow jet, which is this metal part, the brass part here. That's the last part. And the manual says not to remove it because it's pressed in, although I've read several places online that if you would apply gentle pressure with like some pliers of some sort, that you can pull it out of there. And me and my buddy were indeed able to remove it, only to find out that many of them were bent. So I think I'm going to need to replace those. And you can clean those using a high E string on a guitar. If you have an old high E string, I guess that's a common trick that you use to clean those. Anyway, so we also spent a lot of time just sort of like using some like 4/0 steel wool and more of that Seafoam Deep Creep to clean up the exterior of these carbs. Didn't really pay too much attention to the interior, but I think we did a really good job. There's lots of stuff going on here. It's a really complicated piece of machinery, and hopefully we'll be able to put it back together. Otherwise, I just wasted a lot of money. But hopefully somebody finds this information useful, because I did not find all of this information in a single spot. I did not find any helpful tips on how to remove things or what order that they went in. So that is what I am offering to you, watcher, whoever might see this. And as a bonus, I will see if I can't get this on the screen here. This is a diagram in case you don't have a service manual. This is a diagram for, maybe I can go the other direction. This is a diagram for the underside of the float bowl. And so this was showing me how to take it apart and ultimately how I'm going to put it back together, and how I learned a lot of the terminology, in fact. So if you pause the video, you'll be able to see it. And that's all I got. This is the first instructional video I've really ever done. So hopefully you found it useful. And so it lasted just under 20 minutes. How about that? So there'll probably be a part 1 and a part 2. So thanks for watching part 2 if you made it all the way through. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask, although I'm no expert. I'm just being straight up honest with you. Anyway, have a nice day.